Okay, now we're up to doing the extra bit of recording that I talked about that we didn't get to do during the event. So we're going to move on from our work that we did in concept design. So in concept design, we did all the issues, and as part of the presentation, you can see there obviously the revision numbering we had there. Now what we're going to do is move on to documentation. So in documentation, we've got a different layout set up. We've got all the different layout sheets as per our template. You can see here we have our more detailed title block that we want specifically for our delivering our project, and also all the extra details that we want to have as part of the issues. So the key things about this process is about having a bit more information in regards to the issues and actually having a revision history on the document as well. So this is what we're utilising for our communication of the history of each layout for the people we're collaborating with. So what we're about to do is create our first issue. So in terms of creating our first issue, what we want to actually do is we want to actually first of all go up into the top here, and we want to create a new issue. Now, as we talked about in the last session, or the actual main session, when we want to hit this button here, you'd use this button here to click obviously your drawing manager and updating them, as you can see here. And that's something that you typically should be doing beforehand, but we're not going to do this in here because we've just lost time. So I'm going to create a new issue. We're going to continue anyway. Now, what we can do here, and this is what we try and do for the first instance for an issue for the first time we're going to issue it for our documentation. We have a unique naming system for our documentation phase, and it starts with a P for preliminary. And we want to change the name here, and we just want to call this preliminary. Now, once again, we have our issue date. Because of how late we are at getting this done, we're just now getting this done in March, and issued by NH. Now, on this instance, because it's the first time we're going to issue this set of drawings, we're going to override all of the revision IDs. Now I'm going to click the OK button. Now what we're going to do is go back here, and then we want to go by current issue, tree by current issue. And you can see here, all it is including is layout sheets that we have not issued before. Now in this set we have our documentation set and our tender and construction set, so what we want to do is we want to remove that from the current issue. So what you'll see here is when we go down the bottom on the site plan here, we're going to see the details here, which is the override of the issue number, or the issue ID. We have preliminary, which is taken from our issue description, our date, and our initial. So you can see here that what we've done in our template, we've made a mistake in our template, where we haven't got the width here right. So we'll just duck back quickly to our documentation. My initials aren't as long as I'd hope, but the date is longer. So we'll just expand that out a little bit. Close that up. That'll update. Now we can see it fits. So this is, I guess, a test that you do the first time you are going to make sure that you can get this thing to work. So now you can see in this instance what we're looking to do with our issue is we're going to issue the full set the first time. Now there might be a scenario here where you may choose to not include it, but in this instance we're going to include those 4 drawings. So now that we've done that, we are going to close the current issue, and we're going to assume that we've updated. So now we've done that first issue. Now, in that first issue, we haven't utilized the change manager yet. So we kind of have been in a scenario where we have still just used an overall overarching workflow to open that. So what we're going to do here is just go back to our subsets. We'll minimize down the ones that we're not going to work with. And the reason, I guess, before while we talked about the scenario of not applying changes directly hard to the elements is because, you know, when we had our, unfortunately, we got our elevations set so that they are transparent. So had we moved this wall, the wall will be seen through this elevation, and really the only drawing that's going to be updated is our floor plan. So this isn't in the instructions, this bit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our palettes, and we're going to go to our change manager. Now let's, for instance, go into this drawing, and for the sake of people that having fun, we're going to move a couple of doors, and our client wanted some additional doors there. So what that means is our floor plan's updating. So we can see our floor plan's updating, our elevation won't change, and our site plan won't change. So what we want to do is come into our change manager here, and we're going to edit it, double click on it. So I've kept my initials here. Oh, this one's locked because I've used it, sorry. So I'm going to create a new one. So in here we're going to say internal doors updated. And I'm going to enter my initials. Now what you're going to find here is that a lot of these changes information isn't going to populate down here because of the way we have this set up. But what we're going to do is we're going to apply this change to this layout sheet, and as we talked about in the previous instance, you can apply it by dragging and dropping it, or you can apply it by dragging and dropping onto the layout sheet, or you can go into the actual settings themselves and see here, you can change it. So you can see here, because we haven't created an issue, that change hasn't been applied to an issue yet. So what we need to do is obviously update our drawing, which we have done. We're going to now create a new issue. Now, because in this instance we have a scenario whereby the details in the layout history and revision history doesn't actually pick up those details, what I'm going to do is just going to go internal door update. Now I'll push forward the date to 02/03/20 and issued by NH. Now we don't want to override the revision and all included layouts in this instance. But you can see here we've got internal door update. Now what we want to do is we want to include the other drawings in this issue, because for this client we want to actually just make sure that they have all the drawings as a current set. So we can see here by current issue, and what's happened is automatically, because we haven't issued these drawings yet from our tender folder, they've added automatically, so you want to remove them from the current issue as well. So what you're going to see here is that this is going to stay as P1, even though we're going to issue it on the 2nd. Our floor plan is now P2 in our internal door update. Our roof plan still stays at P1, and elevations will still stay at P1. So now we've got that scenario where we're going to do that. So we're going to close that issue. We're going to continue anyway. So now we've got P1 and our P2 here. Now, say for example, and this is always going to happen on a project, we're going to have a new layout. You're never going to have the right number of layouts in play when you start design development or documentation or tender, and you won't be able to utilize the automatic override of your ID. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to have a ceiling plan. So we've just decided to issue a ceiling plan out as part of this set. So what we're going to do here is going to be picking our documentation, and now we've got that layout that didn't appear because we're looking through current issue. We're going to go back to subset. So here we've decided to add a ceiling plan to the mix. Now in this instance, what we're wanting to try and do is we're wanting to issue a ceiling plan as P1 and all of our current drawings that we've just issued, but not change the issue. So we're going to create a new issue, and in this instance you don't want to use this ID to control this ceiling plan, or this could be just a preliminary again, and it could be update. I'm going to go 03/03/20, and I'm going to be the person issuing it, so my initials. we're going to go to our drawings. I'm going to click on the drawings that we want to issue, and we're going to add them to the current issue. I want to go back to our tree by current issue, and then we want to remove our tender and construction. Now what's going to happen is down here, our ceiling plan may or may not follow our naming strategy. So what you'll see here, it's got 01, which is following the strategy that was utilized in concept design. So what we can do is we need to rename that. So you can come down into the bottom corner down here and actually change it to P01, and you'll see it update. We'll just go back to make this 01 again, so it was the way it was. We can also right click on the layout sheet, come to our layout settings, and click in this ID section here and change it to P01. Now once again, as I said, none of these other drawings are going to change, but this is all being given a preliminary update. So what we can now do is close this current issue. Now this is the kind of process that you follow through throughout the whole design and documentation process that I utilize. The reason why we haven't utilized clouds during this phase is typically because the amount of changes that occur on a layout sheet, you'll find that there's too many changes occurring, and it's going to cause a lot of significant grief for people, and it can cause some heartache. But now I guess the next phase is more contractual. So you're going to move into tender and construction phases where clearly communicating the changes to the people that you're sending your documents to will be, very critical. So it's important that you communicate that clearly, and the way you communicate that clearly is through using clouding on your documents. Even though there are tools out there like PDF comparers, you can't rely on the person that's receiving it on site to actually have PDF comparer. They could only have hard copies. So we need to make sure that we're catering for those things. Now, there are opportunities here where you can continue utilizing this same layout sheet during tender and construction, and what you could then do is just go through and change your master at tender and construction phase. So what we can do now is go through to our floor plan, change it to tender and construction. Now what's going to happen here is, because changes weren't applied to it and I didn't set up this adequately for the tender and construction master for my width and my date, which is another nice little mistake to make. But once you build this into a template and you double checked it before you start demonstrating it, it will work nicely. So now that fits. So what you're seeing here is, because on P1 we had issued documents here without any change applied to it, this is pulling change information details. Now also for our tender set, if we were to utilize this workflow, if we didn't want the builder to see these updates, we can go back into our tender and documentation construction, go into the history of our object, and go and change these things. So what we want to do here, the revision ID does not start with P. Now what's going to happen here is we're utilizing this to hide that. Now this is a flawed methodology. If you have a scenario where you're going to have multiple revisions during construction and you actually get up to issue P, then this process won't work. You can add other details in to your issue. Each time you issue, you could potentially add an additional data parameter, and we can do that right now just for a bit of fun, just to demonstrate how you could do that. So we could go in here, and the only reason why I've got added is so it's clear to see what I've actually done. But when you do this, you don't really need to do this, put added in. But let's put in phase and see how that works. Now what we're going to find here is all these other previous issues that we had won't have phases attached to them, and the reason they don't have phases attached to them is because of we didn't add that information when we did it. Okay, so one of the tricks you can do is we can actually reopen the last issue and actually go in and edit it. No, we can't. Let me go back into here. I think once you've actually created the issue, you can't actually get in. Oh, you can get into issue details here. So here, for example, we could have documentation. Okay, Now that means we can go back into our master, our tender and construction master, adjust this, and we come down and phase does not contain documentation. Now what we're going to see then is some of these drawings that we issued here, which was only the ceiling plan, which it didn't have that for some reason, but you can control that. So that's a way in which you can do it. I guess there's an added bit of information if you don't run separate sets and you want to hide that information. So moving into construction, we've got the same processes occurring whereby we need to open issues and close issues, and we want to start a fresh tender set. So for our fresh tender set, in this instance we want to start with issue A. So what we're going to do is go up to the top of our layout book, open a new issue. We're going to close the current issue because we hadn't done that, we were playing with it. Open and create a new issue. Continue anyway, but you would have normally updated everything. In this instance, we're going to call it issue A, and this could be tender. Issue date, and that might be the 4th of March 20. I'm going to be the person issuing it, and here we could put in tender and construction. Now that's a long thing to write every time, but it could be painful. So what we could see here is override. Once again, once we don't need to apply a change to each of these documents, we can go OK. Now let's go to our current issue, and because at this phase we haven't got, we haven't issued these before, that's why these ones appear. But in other instances where you're doing this, you might have to add these other items to your issue. Now, what you're going to see here is that none of these drawings contain details or the initial, because of the fact that this is pulling on information from a change ID. And that's the way we're utilizing it for tender and construction. So what I need to do here is go back and create a new change and keep our IDs rolling and add my initials. Now, I haven't applied that to any of these layout sheets, and as we've talked about in the past, it can be kind of painful to do that to multiple sheets at once. But what we can do is we can go to layout settings, we can go add our change, and we're going to add a tender issue to our changes. That'll then populate the other 2 columns of data in our revision history. And obviously with tender issue and a change there, you won't use a change cloud because of the fact that the whole drawing is being issued. So let's close that current issue. And now we've issued out for tender, we've published all our drawings, we've updated all the layout sheets, and we're going really well. Now in this instance, we'll need to open this source view, which as we know is updated, but the client's decided to delete door. Now in this instance, you'd normally have a door marker here saying exactly what door it was, door number, etc. So let's just imagine that's door DO3. So let's delete that door. And now on the floor plan, we need to update that view. And we need to know, the builder's not going to know by looking at that the door's been deleted. So first of all, let's create a new change. Now you can create a new change by placing a change marker, but my preferred method is always to control it via the change manager first, and then apply a change marker using that. So this one here is going to be door D03 deleted and my initials. Now I've created that change. I'm going to go and create a change marker. Now let's go into the settings for that. Now this is where the challenges come in. You don't want to create a new change here. You want to link it. You want to place a linked marker. So placing a linked marker, we want to go and pick the one we just created. And you can make all these changes in the display as you want to see fit. But then what we want to do is obviously we're going to come in here and apply that. Now because obviously the naming conventions we got here with A starting, it will just consecutively name up. You can see here that it's now combined the details from our change and our initials from the change because I'm responsible for that change. Once again, you can choose to have these set up the way that you work within your business. You can use the date from your business or what have you, but my view is that you might make these changes and then someone else may need to deal with it elseways, you know, in terms of dealing with it, in terms of issuing it. Let's push this to the next level a little bit, just for a bit of fun. We want to change the hand of this door. Sorry, and I'm clicking the wrong buttons. We just changed the hand of that door, so let's create another change. Door D01 hand change. And then we're going to apply another marker to this one. So this is going to be an interesting way in which this occurs, right? So we want to select the change, we're going to check the hand change, and we're going to place that marker there. Now what this actually does, oh, no, sorry, I shouldn't be placing it there. I don't want to place it in the plan. So that's another thing. If you place it in the plan, it can get in the way. So what we want to do is go and place it on our layout sheet, because I get distracted. I decided to do it somewhat differently. You can't see the change here because we haven't updated the drawing. We've updated the drawing. Now we can apply the change, which is the hand change. Now what we're going to see here is going to be quite unique on this layout sheet. You can see here that it's now got door hand change and door 3 deleted. So it's going to contain more information with each cloud. Now there is the ability to have a column here, so you can actually have an extra column with the change ID associated to each one of these items along with the revision if you wanted each individual cloud to have something attached to it differently. Now I've got to go to my elevations as well, and in this instance I know that this door hand's changed, so I'm going to need to update that drawing. Ideally you update all your drawings, but in this instance we're not going to take that time to do that. And there we go. So now we've got a new issue for these two. So now we've identified the changes that we've made, and we want to now create a new issue. Now, based upon how everything works, this name here doesn't actually appear on any of your layouts. But what you actually want to use this name for is to use it for identifying things later. So this one here can be door amendments. Now the key thing to note about this is that although it doesn't appear on the layout in this workflow, it can be useful for identifying things later. You can still pull the change details off as well. Now the issue date's really important, and I decided to issue this on the 4th. Or another key thing to note is, I guess, the reason why we're using the manual date here is because currently it's the 1st of March, but I'm actually not going to make this issue until the 4th of March. And issued by, now, once again, in this workflow, issued by is not actually covered in our, it's not covered on our revision history in this workflow, but it's actually very good to have this because then you can obviously audit and monitor who's actually been doing this. And then if we have the other workflow where we want to filter, you can put in additional phasing, and you can maybe even use phasing of 1, 2, 3 or what have you, and then it can filter those phases out. So now you can see it's now added the date to our workflow, and you can see here because these two drawings have changes applied. So the difference is if you don't apply a change to a layout sheet, it won't automatically put itself up to be part of the next issue. And we have that. Now, as part of this issue, I want to just issue the builders asked for the full list of drawings that are current. So what we're going to do is we're going to add them to the current issue as well. Now, what you're going to see by this is that it's still going to maintain no changes attached to it. So it's not going to up-rev it. So now that we've done that, you can see here on our floor plan, we've got our 2 revision clouds. Those 2 revisions have been tagged to this current revision, and our elevation here also has been tagged and flyed with its revision. So now we're ready to issue. We know that we've got everything we want. We want to close the current issue, and we're going to continue along. Now the positive, obviously, which we didn't really cover, is the ability to go through and edit this issue. We made a mistake, and that's going to happen many occasions where someone says, oh, you need you to issue this one extra drawing, or don't actually issue that drawing. So what we can actually do is we can actually go and reopen our last issue. Okay, and it says, are you sure? And it's going to reset everything. And that enables us to go back there and do it. Now, sometimes there's a scenario, if you want to cleanse your book, you can go back and delete and open and delete individually each release, but, you know, that's not really the case. So we decided not to issue the site plan. We're going to remove that from the current issue. And now we're going to close the current issue. So we've been able to amend what was included in that. So overall, that kind of covers, I guess, the steps that we didn't get to cover as part of the presentation early in February as part of Archi Intensive. But I hope that gives you a little bit more insight into the possibilities. In any case, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and help you work through a workflow that meets your company's needs. The idea is that it is a tool that can be very complex, but at the same time can be very simple. And once your team members actually start working using these processes, you'll find that it's actually quite simple. It just becomes kind of I need to do an issue, then they go through certain steps. And just recently, I think Central Innovation ran a user group meeting up in Brisbane, and they presented a revision history or a transmittal object that they've created. So that goes along with a couple of others, and there's a few gaps in it, I think, and I suggested they could improve on it. So based upon what I've seen from them, what they've created, I might go away and work with Lachlan and Christian to try and create a transmittal that's even beefier. But in any case, I hope this covers off on the areas that we didn't get to cover as part of Archi Intensive in the presentation, and I hope that this helps clarify it for you. So hope you enjoy it, and talk soon.